Greg Knox is the owner of Knox Machinery, incorporated in Franklin, Ohio. You may have heard of him. He received a letter from the president of General Motors telling him that they expected their suppliers to let the politicians know that they backed the bailout. And Greg's no-nonsense reply to that email quickly became the hottest viral email in the country, gaining him national attention. Greg's been featured on radio and television stations across the nation, spreading his message, calling for the United States to return to the morals and principles that have made it the greatest nation on God's green earth. Greg?
Good afternoon, Cincinnati. I love your signs. Great signs. This reminds me of the scene from Braveheart where William Wallace says, "Let's go pick a fight." My name is Greg Knox, and I am a patriot. Webster's defines a patriot as one who loves and defends his or her country. I love my country, and like all of you, I'm here to defend her. I have to make a confession. I'm 46 years old, and I've spent most of my political life on the sidelines, sitting by and leaving the running of the country to the pros while I was taking care of my family and my business. Sure, I got to the polls every few years, punched chads with one hand while I held my nose with the other, doing my patriotic duty and trying to vote for the lesser of two evils. But I've certainly never been what I would call politically active. Sadly, I've not really seen a lot of difference between the two major parties for a long time now. I guess I'm what you would call a meat and potatoes conservative. I read an excellent quote recently from Lee Iacocca, who said, "You don't get anywhere by standing on the sidelines waiting for someone else to take action. We all need to play a role." Great sentiments, I certainly relate. Let me tell you who I am and why I'm here. A dozen years ago, I founded a company called Knox Machinery. We sell and service expensive high-tech metal cutting equipment. I spent my first 8 years working in Detroit, first as an installing technician, and then I worked my way down the ladder to sales. In 1995, my wife Margie and I, who are both from New York City originally, decided that we wanted to raise our children in Cincinnati, Ohio, because of the wholesome family values. When my wife had our second child, I was making about $9 an hour. It was pretty much then that I decided I really needed to make something of myself, and I wanted to pursue my American dream. So with Margie's blessing, I did just that, the old-fashioned way, by working about 70 to 80 hours a week for more years than I can care to remember. I was never home for those years, and it was extremely tough on both of us, especially my incredible wife. But they were also very rewarding years. Now let's turn the clock ahead to late 2008. I come into my office one morning at 6 o'clock, and the very first email I got and opened up was from Detroit, and it was a request for all GM suppliers to call their politicians and let them know that we fully backed the bailout. Well, I guess you could say that I disagreed. I had my own network type of an epiphany. For those of you familiar with that scene from that movie, I kind of said, you know, I'm as mad as heck, and I'm not going to take it anymore. So I quickly replied to their pathetic plea in what was really more of a spleen vent than anything else. And before I hit the send button, I copied my mom on it. And a few hours later, she emailed me and she said, "Great letter. Can I share it with my friends?" Now, my mom's a retired housewife in New York, so I said, sure, you know, figuring that her knitting buddies might get a kick out of it. Never underestimate the power of a mother. Within 2 weeks, my letter was on Fox News. In its first month, it got over 1.1 million hits on Google. My office has literally been deluged with TV crews, radio shows, pilgrims driving from more states than I can believe to shake the hand of the man who wrote the letter. We've received tens of thousands of calls, emails, and letters from everyone from, you know, John Q. Six-Pack to congressmen and governors. So what did the letter say? Well, since you can all go home and Google it, I'm not going to read the whole letter here, but with the limited time I have, I'll share some of it with you. This is what I received from GM. Dear employees and suppliers, Congress and the current administration will soon determine whether to provide immediate support to the domestic auto industry to help it through one of the most difficult economic times in our nation's history. Your elected officials must hear from all of us now why this support is so critical to our continuing the progress we began prior to the global financial crisis. As a supplier, you have a lot at stake and continue to be one of our most effective and passionate voices. I know GM can count on you to have your voice heard. Thank you for your urgent action and ongoing support. Troy Clark, President, General Motors, North America. And my reply, gentlemen, in response to your request to contact legislators and ask for a bailout of the big three automakers, please consider the following, and please pass my thoughts on to Troy Clark, President of General Motors, North America. Politicians and management of the big three are both infected with the same entitlement mentality that has spread like cancerous germs in UAW halls for the last countless decades. And whose plague is now sweeping this nation, awaiting our new Messiah, President-elect Obama, to wave his magic wand and make all of our problems go away, while at the same time allowing our once great nation to keep living the dream. Believe me, folks, that dream is over. We are living through the inevitable outcome of the actions of the United States auto industry for decades. It's time to pay for your sins, Detroit. I would not have given the banks a penny of bailout money. Yes, this would cause short-term problems, but despite what people like George Bush and Troy Clark would have us believe, the sun would in fact rise tomorrow, and the following very important thing would happen. Where there had been greedy and sloppy banks, new efficient ones would pop up. That's how a free market system works, and it does work if we let it work. But for some reason, we're now deciding that the rest of the world is right and that capitalism doesn't work. That we need the government to step in and save us. Save us, my foot, we're nationalizing. And unfortunately, too many of this fine nation's citizens don't have a clue that that's what's really happening. But they sure can tell you the stats on their favorite sports teams. Yeah, that's important. Again, I could go on, but I wouldn't be telling anyone anything they didn't really already know deep in their hearts. I have 6 children, so I'm not unfamiliar with the concept of wanting someone to bail you out of a mess you've gotten yourself into. My children do this on a weekly, if not a daily basis, as I did when I was their age. I do for them what my parents did for me, one of their greatest gifts, by the way. I make them stand on their own 2 feet and accept the consequences of their actions and work them through. Radical concept, huh? Am I there for them in the wings? Of course, but only until such time as they can be fully on their own as adults. I don't want to oversimplify a complex situation, but there certainly are unmistakable parallels between the proper role of parenting and government. Detroit and the United States need to pay for their sins. Bad news, people. It's coming whether we like it or not. The newly elected Messiah really doesn't have a magic wand big enough to make it all go away. I laughed as I heard Obama reeling it back in almost immediately after the final vote count was tallied. We might not do it in a year, we're in 4. Where the heck was that kind of talk when he was running for office?